I'm ready.
Hey, Trails Collective, Ian and Ellie here with the weekly rundown for July 15th, 2020. We opened tonight with a clip from always entertaining and colorful Matthias Lipchitz and one of his aliases. In this week's little clip, coming in with the no doubt about to go viral and big puddle boarding. So word has it that there's a pretty solid biff flip that maybe didn't make the video clip, but always entertaining. So no doubt about the takeoff. Y'all need to get out there and find yourself a skimboard and get out after it after some heavy rains. I think you need a little bit shallower puddle, but no less muddy than what they're finding there. So always good to have that energy and check in on what Matt and crew is after. So busy week on my end. Just returned from vacation right into the busyness of prepping for the Cayuga Trails 50s and Lucifer's Crossing trail races, which I'm putting on this Saturday. As all of you can imagine, it's quite a bit more complicated, convoluted of a process this year, but I'm pretty excited that we're still going to be running. We've made significant modifications to event format, to course. We submitted a pretty good risk management plan to the parks. The parks went to bat for us with the state, and it ran all the way up to the governor's office proper. So while our field is quite a bit smaller than in prior years, I'm excited just for the opportunity, albeit a bit nervous just that the plan really works and that everybody comes out the other end happy, stoked to have run an event, but also safe. So that's what's coming. I was out on the trail for a bit today, clearing trail, some new trail in Buttermilk Falls State Park, which is part of the course. And as part of modifying the course to make it more one-directional and limit any cross traffic, they're allowing me to create some additional sections to loop through. So really beautiful forest, and I'm pretty excited to get into this weekend. So I came back into the shop this week to find this gem, the Saucony Mad River TR2. Saucony is also sponsoring us for Cayuga Trails 50s again this year. But for all of you who maybe caught it early on, the Saucony Mad River 1 is one of my favorite and most versatile trail shoes of all time, coming out of last year. So I'm pretty excited to get the TR2 on my feet this week, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'm a little backed up on gear reviews, but I'll get there. Not remarkably different on this one, so I'm not expecting anything too different from the TR1, but we'll give it a run and we'll let you know how it goes. I know there are also a good number of you out there that also really enjoyed this shoe, so let us know if we can get you a pair in the mail or headed your way. So scanning the media a little bit this week, there was, I think, just one article on the Virginia Happy Trails Facebook page regarding an female trail runner out there, just out on a run, that happened to collide with a young grizzly bear. Both, I think, collided, rolled off the trail. I think she had some maybe bangs, bruises, but both left and ran off unharmed. So pretty wild. I don't know whether any of you out there have had your own wildlife encounters. I know a good friend Yassine, who we've mentioned on the show a couple times, had him weigh in just a couple weeks ago. He's just a good friend. In trail running, I know he's had quite his share of wildlife encounters. One of his things is I think birds tend to go after him on the trail. So pretty wild karma out there. For myself, I think one of the craziest ones, I think one time I was running up in the hills or into the mountains outside of Jackson, Wyoming. And I came up on this rise and emerged from the forest in this clearing that was, I don't know, maybe 50 meters across by 30 meters across, fairly small clearing, and the single track was just splitting this little plateau. And standing right on top of the single track facing me, maybe, I don't know, 20 meters away, was a bison. So I don't know whether many of you out there have been head-to-head with a bison, but a pretty large, intimidating animal. But it was pretty magnificent. Wasn't quite sure what to do in that moment. And so I think I just stood there and talked to him for a few minutes. And he just stood and stared at me for what seemed like a few minutes. And then he turned and walked off the trail and then spun around to look at me again as if to say, you may pass. So pretty cool. So I don't know whether any of you have had pretty cool wildlife encounters. Weigh in, comment, let us know. Maybe you can regale one of the tales that we can close one of the rundowns one of these weeks. So just a cool find on the media pages. In the FKT worlds, again, big shout out to fastestknowntimes.com. It's the website that I'm able to dig in and see who's doing what and focusing on the FKTs in our region. Massachusetts, Tim Russell ran a 2:17 for the Greylock AT Traverse, taking 9 minutes off Greg Buzalencia's mark from just mid-June. And I guess on that, what I'm finding so far, or what I'm seeing right now, is there are several people that are going back at route or times that were set in mid-June, whether it be old routes or whether it be new marks that were just set in June for new routes. So definitely picking up. It's cool to see more people going after some of this, especially in the current day where more formalized events aren't really happening. But I think the FKT scene and that effort is a pretty pure thing. Just somebody out there on their own going after it. And so it's pretty cool. So that's what's somewhat drawing me to the FKTs. In Maine, Jordan Fields ran a 1:36 on Mount Katahdin. In New Hampshire, Steve Lange on Franconia, I don't know, notch or area. I don't have the details at the moment, but I'm pretty sure it was an FKT effort. So maybe I can bring that to you next week, and maybe a few words from Steve as well. He was up there with a pretty good crew, which has kind of been his posse, or their posse, the past few weeks, getting after some pretty cool outings and efforts. In New York, Lauren Longfield ran a 1:13 for Hurricane Mountain, a really solid time. She's not one to shy away from tough routes and pretty solid efforts. We mentioned that she had set one on the pretty burly Mount Tammany in June, so clearly she's keeping up the fitness. Katie O'Regan out of PA sent one for the Schunemunk Ridge Loop in 2:46. Aaron Newell hammered Big Slide Mountain in 1:28, shaving 8 minutes off of Frankie DeSoma's time from mid-June. Mark I'm not going to pronounce it right, Gadmski, for the Black Dome Windham High Peak Loop in 4:04. He lowered John Kalo's time from mid-June by over 15 minutes. In Vermont, one of my team members, Liam Creegan, set a mark on the iconic stretch of the Long Trail in Vermont, running a 4:07 on the Monroe Skyline Gap-to-Gap-to-Gap. This mark is 24 minutes lower than Ben Nephew's original mark, or actually it wasn't even original at that point, mark from 2017, and 8 minutes lower than Josh Burns' most recent mark from also mid-June of this year. So Liam definitely cranking. Also of note, while there may be a good number already, this is the first time that I'm seeing an individual list their mark as non-binary in gender category. I'd wondered whether that had been an option already, but since I haven't used the platform myself, as I'm kind of old, broken, and pretty soft at this point, I just hadn't used it to know whether that was an option. So clearly it is, and pretty cool that Liam used it. Josh Ferenc shaved 10 minutes off of Dan Grip's pretty stout time from just this past April, which we also covered, to finish in 3:19 for the Glastonbury West Ridge Loop. Nice work, Josh. And upcoming in PA, Eric Kosek is about to set off for the Midstate Trail this weekend. Big good luck to you, Eric. Hang tough, and look forward to hearing about your experience. Speaking of Eric and segueing into events just this past weekend, Eric Kosek's put on the Unlucky 13 Idiots. We will have a video coming from them. In the interim, this is the word from Grace and the crew. 26 runners tackled the Unlucky Idiot 13-hour challenge last Saturday, July 11th. Eric Kosek created this 4.1-mile loop in Wellsboro, PA, where a bunch of idiots run as many loops as they can in 13 hours. Or they run a few loops and hang out with other idiots. Anthony Wallick led the pack all day with 62 miles, with Michelle Benshoff finishing the fierce second place on his heels. Jon Scovell battled it out with Kip to eventually take third and fourth place respectively. The 13th finisher, LeAnn Gotshall Martinez, finished up with 40 miles and also took home a prize because why not? 13th is Great Place. We're looking forward to seeing some behind-the-scenes footage soon from this crazy event, so stay tuned for the video of the idiots in action, hopefully bringing it to you next week, as well as some details of Eric's Midstate run to come. The Katahdin 50K, which we had mentioned the week or two prior, 50K and a half put on by Kevin Sayers in Franklin, Maryland, went off this past weekend. They had 68 finishers in the 50K, with Aaron Elliston taking the win in 5:58 and Riley Shui in 6:53. In the 25K, we saw a really fast year. Relatively, I think, newer distance for that race, maybe just a few years old. But of the 45 finishers, the top 3 men established the first, second, and fifth fastest times on the course, with Sean Leahy from Alexandria, Virginia, establishing a new course record in 3:11. The women's field was even deeper, with the top 8 finishers establishing 8 of the 10 fastest times on that course, with LeAnn Gotshall of Mount Airy, Maryland, taking the win in a record time of 3:28. So breaking down some of the media that's been out there this past week, Ellie, take it.
Hey Trails Collective, Ellie here, and it's time for your podcast and media information for the week. The gang at Cultra put out a burner of an episode. Jimmy celebrated 10 years of running with a 40-mile run. And nope, he still doesn't have abs. I don't know what he's doing wrong, guys. Maybe that's for year 11? Becky then spoke about her recent run on a track. She wanted to run for 24 hours, but stomach issues and a whole lot of peeing stood in her way. She pulled the plug at 75 miles, but holy shit, Becky, 75 miles on a track and peeing on the track? Well, good thing we're in quarantine because a little bit of rain will definitely be needed to wash that off. Jay was silent at the Pain Cave this week, so come on, Jay. Now you've been on a roll, and your episodes are great. Let's get some more out. Chris and I over at Hamstrings and Heartstrings put out a show last week after a month off, so I guess I can understand that Jay needed a week or two break. Chris felt the need to step back from social media, and I really wanted to give him that space. Sometimes it's just bad for mental health to be so engaged, and Chris was really feeling it after his poison ivy, and then his job was starting to pick up. So we talked about Cayuga Trails and the double standard we feel is going to happen with races. Runners, I feel like we're very progressive. We've been wearing our masks, we've been doing that, but we also are a little bit anxious to get into races, and I feel maybe a little over anxious. To be seen. There's also a food segment, so even though the episode is all over the place, we end on something delicious. Running Inside Out is putting out a great episode, which I am lucky to have insider information on. However, it's not out at the time of this recording, so stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it. Life is Trail Running has 2 new videos out. The first being scenes from our local trails here in Ithaca. They went to Monkey Run, which is a little bit windy. You can get lost, but it's up and down, super runnable, and really pretty. The second video was a vegan sloppy joe recipe, which looks completely delicious, especially after a run or a long day outside. Regarding the Trails Collective media, I put out an episode last Friday with Elizabeth Fontanen, and just in time for you to get all stoked on Cayuga Trails, which is happening this weekend, as of my recording, so TBD, but it's still going on. She ran it a month or so ago on what would have been the race day, and she's going to give it another go in a couple days. Good luck to all of you, and here is a clip from that interview.
2 years, looking at just your Instagram and then reading about, I believe it's Stash. What is that called?
Yep, Stash Strong.
Stash Strong. It seems like the stoke is pretty high with you, and I can't wait to get into that because I love running, and so anybody else that loves it, it's just wonderful to talk to those kind of people. So you are 31 years old. You are a mom of 2.
Tonight, I plan to edit and release an episode with one of my favorite humans on the planet. I am so lucky to be friends with Sheila Egan, who you heard from a few weeks ago on a double interview with her husband, Eric. Well, Sheila is even cooler alone. We talk running with your partner, Rochester schools, Trails Rock, Many on the Jenny, and so much more. Watch that episode now because it's out. And that's all I have for this week. So back to you, Ian.
Thank you, Ellie. Events upcoming. I'll try to announce registrations that open or reopen when I can. That's going to be a little tougher for me to catch at the moment and until the site really builds. So if you have an event that you have your eyes on, particularly ones that sell out fairly quickly or new ones are just a favorite for you, please send me a message and let me know that registration's opening, or if you're an RD and you want me to announce that registration's opening, for sure, shoot me a message, trailscollective@gmail.com, or via Facebook to Trails Collective, and let us know what that is. So one that I just happened to catch, registration has reopened for the Live Out Loud Runnings 2020 Pachog Trail Runs. It was a half marathon, and 50K in relay. I think there was a 50 mile that was maybe not in the mix this year. It's in Connecticut on October 24th. The registration platform that you can find or that they're using is Ultra Sign Up. We'll plug it in the show notes, so check it out. So for this upcoming weekend, July 18th and 19th, events that have been canceled but would have run: the Vermont 100, the Ragnar Trail Vermont, the Battle of Bristol Mountain in New York. I haven't followed up to see whether they made it through or not. Last I checked, they were still in a holding pattern. Ones that went virtual: Run First, Wine Later in Leesburg, Virginia from Bishop's Events. The Candlelight 12-hour in Honeoye Falls, also one that has gone virtual, and we'll have the registration links also in the show notes. Those that I think are running this weekend: it's a Smallfoot Trail Fest 5K down in Troy, PA. Pretty awesome event, getting kids out on the trail and put on by several entities coming together for a pretty good cause down there. Prowl the Sproul 10K changed staging locations this year, secondary to COVID considerations and permitting, but supposedly a pretty burly, cool course that they have created from the new staging area. And then mine, which I'd mentioned, the Cayuga Trails 50s, a 50 mile, 50K, and then there's a Lucifer's Crossing 10K. They'll all go off on Saturday. The Night Owl 9K in Williamsburg, Virginia, also going, and the Cocopin 12-hour Trail Challenge in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Next weekend is a heads up, July 25th and 26th. Events that should have run but are canceled for this year: the Wakely Dam Ultra, Run with the Deer Flies, the Escarpment Trail Run, a classic, and the Mount Mansfield Double Up, which again, as I mentioned last week, just looks like a really outstanding, beautiful course, and is definitely on my bucket list. And I think a small field to get in on early. I think they have a pretty low cap. Events still scheduled to run: the Miners Lady 8-hour in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, the Jug End Loop Ultra in Egremont, Massachusetts, the Soapstone Assault in Somers, Connecticut, and yeah, I think they're the ones that went down. And so we'll take you out tonight with a clip from Jeff Adams, literally fresh off finishing in the top of the field this past weekend's Quarantine Backyard Ultra. I'm not going to tell you where he checked out, but it was a long way into the effort. So yeah, check it out. Always good to have voices from the collective. If you had an event or you want to cue me into somebody who put in a pretty good effort that maybe we should reach out to, it's always good to hear voices from out on the trails. So good luck to those this weekend going after FKTs, racing Cayuga Trails, Lucifer's Crossing, the Sproul 10K, wherever you're at. Hopefully have a great weekend. If you're out there just keeping it distant and keeping it safe, thank you. Mask up, and until next week, take it, Jeff.
Good afternoon to everyone at the Trails Collective YouTube channel. My name is Jeffrey Adams, and I participated in the Quarantine Backyard Ultra this past weekend. And Ian had reached out and was looking for a short recap to the race and my experience with it. This was my first opportunity to try this style of race, and if you are unfamiliar, every runner has 1 hour to complete a course of 4.187 miles. Being the virtual style, it could be on a treadmill or a course in and around your home. I had never participated in one of these, so I was unsure of what I might be able to do, but I had started with the thought of 150 miles as something that I felt I could accomplish, and then from there it would be just some icing on the cake and see what I could do against the field of 1,200 plus runners. My strategy was to run 2 different loops and in an out and back style. One being my main route at night, given the simplicity and location of it, the ease of the course, both being relatively flat, as I live in Buffalo, New York, and there aren't a lot of hills around here, so to add difficulty to it. I was coming in and out of my house at the end of, or start and finish of each loop, and my girlfriend was my support crew at home, helping me refuel, rehydrate, and stay on top of personal physical care as well, with outfits and shoe changes and any other things that I might need. Day 1 for me was a little muggy. Temperatures weren't too bad, but it rained on and off, sometimes pretty hard throughout the day, and it eventually stopped raining in the early evening, and I had dry conditions the rest of the night and all of Sunday. Sunday was much warmer, humid, and very sunny. And as you can possibly see, I did not put sunscreen on my face until late and got a little sunburn. I tried my best to maintain some pretty even splits. I was possibly a little fast in the first few hours, but I was also trying to give myself plenty of time to rest and refuel before each loop. And so I carried on with that strategy throughout the entirety. I then, as I became a little bit more fatigued, I tried to keep the pace a little bit smoother, but still giving myself that time at home. As I passed the 150-mile mark on day 2, at 36 hours, I was very excited with that, and knew that from there, anything that I did, I was just going to be pleased with. At that point, I found myself inside the top 10, and then just had more and more people drop out. And as I was entering the night, Sunday night, I was then within the top 6, and just kept whittling away. I was beginning to feel the effects of the long days and the lack of sleep. I was quite fatigued at that point. I then started to have some pains in my lower leg on the left, which I had had an injury the previous fall during an FKT run that I did in New York, and at loop 41 I was certain that I could no longer continue, but when I got back to home, I tried to quit, but my girlfriend Maura told me that I couldn't, and that I needed to at least try one more loop, and if I failed to come back in time, then at least I knew I tried and gave it my all. So I went out for loop 42, and when I got back during that final loop, I knew that it was in my best interest to stop due to the pain that I was feeling in the leg, and not risking further damage and potential recovery or a need for downtime greater than what would be needed to recover from this in the first place. So not to risk injury, I then dropped out of the race at the end of hour 42, as the third to last runner. It was a great experience and unlike anything that I had previously done, and I would suggest that if you have the chance to do this type of race, either in the virtual sense that we have right now, or if and when races are able to continue again on a more normal basis, definitely give it a shot and see what you're made of, because it's just all about trying to find your limits. So thank you all for tuning in, and get out there and run.